Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. Sorry we're a little bit late. We had little technical issues, and we still do. So one of the big technical issues we had is my speaker, who lives in Scituate, Coyle, Dr. Caitlin Coyle, couldn't make it because she's stuck at home, no electricity, you know, the whole bit. So you're gonna have to listen to my voice all night long. The good news is I've heard her present these slides a number of times, so I'm gonna do my best to relay to you what I think the main messages are. But I apologize, you have to listen to my voice all night long. Anyway, so I'm Rich Wallner. Although I'm on the select board, I'm acting as a resident concerned citizen, someone who's been following this issue for like 10 years. So I want to be very clear that I'm not trying to represent the board. I'm just trying to bring forward a story that I think is very important for our town. Again, thank you for coming out. We're going to miss Caitlin. Caitlin Coyle, you know, she's, I'll skip a little bit ahead. She's leading one of the major groups that studies gerontology, demographic research, and this type of thing. She went to Ohio State University, psychology research, journalism, public affairs, and she's been working at the UMass Boston Center ever since, which is, you know, one of the, I think, the top 3 in the country for places to do this kind of work. The ad hoc friendly team has thinned down a little bit. Again, I've been losing people here. So Jen Ford is with me. This is the ad hoc age friendly team. So it was Kim Manzelli. A lot of people know it was myself, Jen, and it was Catherine McCabe-Scott, who just lost a family member, so she couldn't make it as well. So we've been having dropouts here left and right. But anyways, that's been our assignment. And the main purpose of the ad hoc age-friendly team was we became aware, you know, we had been kind of taking this a little out of order. We started with COA, Council of Aging. I came into this through Mary, because Mary and I had daughters who were on the cheerleading squad, and I just thought it'd be fun to join her group.
In progress.
Got it. And so I thought it'd be fun to, you know, work with Mary, and I quickly learned from Mary that things were not right when it came to seniors. We did one of the biggest things we did was we did a senior summit, and we had about 75 people come down to the senior center, and they gave us a laundry list of things they were upset about, but the main thing was taxes are too high and there's no transportation. And that was the takeaway as far as infrastructure was concerned. But then somebody came up to me afterwards and she said, you know, at the end of the day, North Reading is just not a senior-friendly town. And that really stuck with me, like really stuck with me. So, the second thing we did, which was really good, was we did the Social Services Summit. And that we brought in many people here, actually. We brought in the police department, we brought in the fire department, we brought in the schools, we brought in everybody else. And what we came to discover, we brought people in so we could talk about this issue. And what we found out was they were creating the CIT, which is the Community Impact Team. And we were pleased to hear that, and soon after we were invited to join, which was really good. So those are 2 big things that came out of that. Then my history went through, within the CIT, we started the Social Services Action Team. We did the North Reading Senior Action Team, which was focused on the seniors. We created a private group, which was called ACT, Advocates for Adults, Community and Team, and we've been focused on this ever since. So we've built up over the years, and you're going to see some pictures of the people who've been involved, like Rita, like Diane, a lot of people here. We've built up a lot of anecdotal evidence, what we thought was important to our town. And then in 2018, we discovered the age-friendly AARP program, which when I read through it, it was like everything we were trying to do was in here. So why are we trying to do this anymore? Let's just adopt what they had to offer. And so we took that on, and at that point, Kim took over the SSAT stuff, and then I moved on to the select board going through there. So that's how this all kind of came about. The agenda for tonight is I'll be covering key points that I think we all need to know, key concepts that we've learned. Then we'll be doing the UMass survey. It now puts data to a lot of the things that we've been have been trying to identify for years to come forward. And then we can't do this without thinking infrastructure, because just like the schools, you know, if you knew your demographics were going to increase dramatically in your schools, you'd be working on programming, you'd be working on buildings. We can't possibly take on the demographic that is so important to our town without also thinking about demographics as well. All right, I don't come here unprepared. The studies, the one I'm referring to, let's take it in order. I've also, throughout this, I've been very nosy into other people's business, meaning like I've gone to a lot of CPC meetings, as many of you know, and I've been very participatory in all the things they do, because just like a school committee is focused on taking care of the schools, the CPC is really committed to focusing on the needs of the community. And so I've tried to be a participant. So some of the studies I'm going to refer to is the 2016 North Reading Short-Term Main Street Economic Development Strategy. It wasn't a small production. It actually was a number of people. I think we went to 3 different forums downtown. We always had 50, 60 people at those forums. There was a lot of interaction, a lot of good exchanges of information. I'll be sharing that with you tonight. In 2018, we did the North Reading Housing Production Plan. Again, this was like a very large, you can see the survey numbers, 806 people responded to the survey. We had a number of forums when we went through and really dug in on housing, because housing is a big issue for us. And then a lot of this, including a study that appeared before, went into the North Reading Master Plan of 2020 to 2030. And so I'm drawing information. I'm saving you my research started many weeks ago, like this deep, and I'm trying to get it down to this. So I'm pulling out, the gems that I think you need to hear. If you want to look at any of them, you can find them on the CPC website. I brought hard copies of stuff so people can look at them if they want. And I'd be happy to review technical issues, after the meeting. And then, of course, we now have the 2021 Age-Friendly Community Needs Assessment. We have the Roadmap to Livability, which is where we're taking this from. And then I've already mentioned the 10-year research project as we went through this. And those are some of the people over the years. Some of them are in the room right here. Some of them are missing. We're missing Gloria. There's been a lot of people who have been involved. And what we did for all those years was we met every second Thursday of the month, 10 o'clock at Town Hall. And we'd talk for an hour and a half, and we'd go through this. And we did a lot of research to figure out things. We do a lot of studies. We'd bring a lot of people in, and we'd be talking to them to try to figure out what's going on. Again, until we had the AARP thing. And there's Kim and Zelly there too at one of the many outreach things we did. So what did we learn anecdotally that I've tested 10 years over? The 3 universal truths that people who are older are looking for is, 1, they want to stay in their home as long as they possibly can. That is their source of comfort. They don't want to leave their home. They love their home as long as they possibly can. The second thing they want is to live in their community and be close to their family and friends. This is very, very important to them, and it's a critical issue. In my life, I'm a financial planner. When I ask people what they want to do when they retire, they often talk about, I'm going to go to Florida and everything else like that. And then I remind them, where's your family? And they go, well, my family's up here. And after we talk a few sessions, 9 out of 10 times, they've decided they'd rather stay here next to their family than to leave. They'd rather stay in their community because the connections are, really meaningful over a period of time, especially if you've been in a community for years. And the other thing they want to do is lead a life of purpose. They want to contribute to their world. And that's a little bit not what people think when they think of seniors. They think of seniors as people who are taking. They're getting services. We're just, they're in need and they're not contributing. Nothing could be further from the truth. People want to contribute and they want to lead a life of purpose, regardless of their age or ability. So let's talk about, again, this is key concepts, the big things that are happening in town here. And so as you look at this, this chart, this came out of the housing production plan, and I can only go up to 2015 because I don't have the 2020 data to add in, but I think you can see what's going on. If you look at the young ages, and I think it follows the school enrollment pretty clearly, if you add that all up, light blue being 1990, 2000 being the census, the gold, and then dark blue on the right being the 2015, the demographics of that age have been pretty flat if you go across the way. Actually, school enrollment has actually been decreasing over time. So we're around 2,400 students in school right now, enrolled in our schools. If you look at the other side, now you're seeing this huge spike in the 45 to 54-year-old band. You're seeing this we're rocketing up. It's just taken off like a rocket. And you see the same thing in the 55 to 64s, and you see the same thing in the 65s. And this is the dramatic change, and I've been seeing this for a long time. I mean, we are changing in a major, major way, and what I saw 10 years ago and what our team saw 10 years ago was we weren't prepared to do that. We weren't prepared to take that on. So let's just kind of compare it to national trends, because North Reading is outstanding in its numbers in many different ways. The national trend is that by age 65, 1 out of 5 people, for age 65 and older, by 2030, 1 out of 5 people in the United States will be 65 or older. And then the other telling thing nationally is that by age 65, the age 65 people will exceed the age under 18 by the year 2035. These are major demographic changes. In North Reading, we set new records. 2 out of 5 residents by 2035. So that means 40% of our residents, 6,400 out of our 16,000, will be 60 or older. And just not too long ago, in 2010, we were only at 10%. So that's a significant change. We are the fastest growing demographic in Massachusetts, and like I said, school enrollment has been flat. But here's the really good news. Again, if the myth is, wow, we have too many seniors, you couldn't be more wrong. Here's why. Let's take this down to just fiscal concerns. If you look at what we spend for a student, and I got this out of the school budget, the more recent one, and they only published the fiscal year 2018, the spending per student is $16,000. That's their tuition to go to school. That's what we pay to support them to go to school. The average household property tax is $9,000. So of that $9,000, basically a third of that goes to municipal services, and 2/3 of that goes to the budget for the schools. So if you said, I have one child in school, and I have my child going to school, I'm anting up $6,000, but my neighbors are anting up the balance of $10,000. So I used to say, when Alex was going to school, and now he's in college, but when I was going to school, thank goodness for Bridget and Brian, and thank goodness for Ben and Carrie, because they don't have kids in school right now. They're paying for my kid to go to school. If we flip that around and actually had 2 kids, you can see the numbers really get really outrageous. So in order for a house to actually break even and pay their due, they'd have to be at $24,000 in order to pay the expenses of sending their kids to school. So this is, again, what are the seniors doing for us? Yeah, they live here. What else are they doing? They're throwing in a lot of property taxes to sustain our schools. And as we all know, we love our schools. Our schools are great. But without that underwriting going on, without them being benefactors, we'd be in a world of hurt. And so we have to keep that in mind as we think about embracing this population that's going forward. Okay, a little changing the conversation again. The MIT Age Lab, they did this thing called 8,000 days. And basically, if you divide up 8,000 days, it ends up to be 22 years. So there's 4 bands that people experience in their life. And the first band is learning, 0 to 22, makes sense. You're growing and maturing, 22 to 44, and maturing is 44 to 64. This is a very recent study, and MIT Age Lab is extremely progressive in how they look at things. And what they came to understand is that the traditional review of retirement is outdated. People want to be continually engaged with working and volunteering. People want to spend time with their family and friends. People want to have leisure time and activities. And they overall have a very healthy view of their life. They're optimistic. So I don't know if we're going to be able to see this so well. I'm sorry, you can't quite see the bottom there. But in the exploring phase, at 64 plus, it starts out by you're in a honeymoon. You're getting ready to retire, you're retired, you have lots of money, 401k is flush right now, you're feeling good about life, you're healthy, you're able to get around, you're able to travel, life is good. And then you start asking the question, like, I'm starting to see my friends, and maybe they're not doing so well. So then you start thinking about, well, do I want to stay in my town? Do I think there's a future for me here? And then you're getting into navigating longevity, wherever you've committed to go. Now you got to figure out, when you start having health problems, how you're going to handle that. And then usually for everybody, it ends up to be a solo journey at the end, and that's typically women who end up to be solo. If you ever go into the nursing homes, it's 80% women, 20% men. Women just outlast men in a substantial way. So this is where it gets kind of interesting. So now if we take that model and put it into our demographic, we can start to define us just a little bit better. Senior and elderly references is a legal term for the Massachusetts, correct? 60 plus is the legal term for elderly in Massachusetts? Yeah. Am I right when I say that, Mary? Yep. I always remember you saying that. I don't like the term, but I understand where it comes from. If we were Native American, it would be a great term, but unfortunately in America we don't perceive it as being so good. But let's break it down. Active seniors. This is our largest subcategory demographic. Like I said before, they have lots of money, they're financially secure, they're still working, they're active. They can afford an empty nester household. They don't have to leave their home anytime too soon. And you're usually part of the sandwich generation. You're going to see this later on. I think everybody knows what the sandwich generation is, but usually they're getting tagged on both ends. Kids in school, parents who need help, right? Solo wagers are people who are living alone in their household, or maybe it's the two together equal one. So if you have a couple together and one can't drive, but one can drive, 1 and 1 equals 1. They are able to be functional as a household. So in our town, we studied this. I originally thought I was going to call it Project 100. We actually studied it. It's actually Project 500. We have 500 households in town that are living alone in overhoused situations where they're only one step away from having a bad experience. And this became really pronounced when the pandemic came out. We started the 01864, right? Jen, you had a lot to do with that. We had 100 volunteers, and we had a number of people who were looking for services. Simple services as, I'm going to the store, can I get you something, from the store, because you don't want to expose yourself to, the public at this point, right? And it was a huge outcome. That was Project 500 in my mind. So they live alone, dollars are getting tighter, and the big deal is they're also isolated. They're not coming out as much, which is that violates our universal truth of happiness. And then we get into the elderly, and this is the smallest part of our senior demographic. They're on fixed income. They are overhoused in our town because they really can't afford to move anywhere else. If you thought about selling your house and go to a condo, oftentimes by the time you add in how much the condos cost, which are very expensive, and add in that monthly rate at $400 or $500 a month, you wonder why you move. So they're kind of stuck in their home, but they're stressed for money. They have health and daily living issues, and again, you can't see it. They're isolated. They need services, including transportation, and this is where Mary's group, Council of Aging Elder Services, plays a much larger role in their life. But we really haven't addressed the active seniors. So now we're going to talk about the hidden demographic. And this one is the most important one for us to know, because I think the other ones are kind of obvious and clear to us. But the hidden demographic these are pre-empty nesters. These are people who are usually in their 50s. They usually have their kids in the school system, or they just in that honeymoon period where their kids are just out, and they're asking the big questions. And I discovered this question, I did we have the Thanksgiving dinner. And a few years before I discovered what this was, I went there and I gave what I thought was an impassioned speech to, 200-300 people who were, seniors, elderly, and I was asking for them, to get involved, right? And I sat at the door on the way out, and everybody said, "Good job," and I didn't get one name, not one name the whole time. So we went skiing in Utah, and I was sitting on a lift, and it suddenly dawned on me, I'm asking the wrong question. Who are we trying to get to? We're trying to get to the people who came here for our schools, who are suddenly just figuring out they've had this great experience, they've been at the fields, their kids have been connected, they love our community, and all of a sudden their kids are gone, and they're asked the question, is there life after kids? And when I started asking this question, people started their eyes lighted up. Well, I've been thinking about that, and it's kind of a big issue. And then I started saying, well, do you stay or do you go? And I don't know. They haven't thought about it. So these two questions have really opened up my eyes to this hidden demographic. And we're going to see how important this demographic is to us, because this is our future community if we don't think about them and what their needs are. And by the way, I'm probably, what category are we in? The honeymoon stage? Yeah. No, we're not talking marriage. We're talking life cycle. My wife is here, for those who don't know. Joyce is here. All right, so, you can't see it. All right, so 39% of the respondents under 60 do not find it important to remain in North Reading as they age. This is the most important slide. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at the age 60 on the right, 20% of the people, and this is standard across Massachusetts, 20% of the people say it's really not important, I stay in my community, but 80% say it really is important to me, right? In our town, we set an all-new record. No one is this high in all of Massachusetts. We're double what the average is. We're double than the closest communities like Weston, Carlisle, Swampscott. We're at 39%. So Caitlin, if she was able to speak on this, what she would tell you is that we had heard for years, and they have experience covering 50 communities. For years, they've heard about this, but never really saw any real hard evidence. This is the first time she's ever seen this hard evidence that we have an issue. And the issue is that people come to go to our schools, and they become transactional because when the school is done, they run. And then someone else cycles in, and they never get what this community was built upon. If we take it back 40 years, people that came to our town, the schools were good, but they weren't, the infrastructure wasn't great. There was many things in town. I mean, we came, you didn't, but I came here to go to the Starlight Drive-In, and it was very country. I remember riding around. This was like 1979, 1980, thinking, wow, this is really country bumpkin land. We don't look like that anymore. But the people that came here, who brought their kids here, who built a community, not only they raised their kids, but they decided to improve the schools, to actually put their own financial security at risk by investing in a school that brought up their property taxes in a huge amount, but they felt a loyalty to their community that what I'm seeing here, they don't experience. And one of the reasons why they don't experience is because one of the reasons I think why they haven't experienced is because we haven't reached out to them in the way we need to keep them here and have them be those two houses that put our kids to school and make our community something great that it already is. What I'm worried about is we're not going to be great. We're going to lose that relationship and we're going to become transactional. That's what I'm really fundamentally worried about. So what is the, again, Jen and I are the ones standing here, the age-friendly team, what we've always, and we're modifying our charge, if you will, our mission, is, what have we learned over the 10 years and what can we say we're thinking about? We want to embrace the rising seniors who are our future so that their families can remain committed to the community. Let's do all we can to recognize our current seniors and embrace their energy, skill set, and financial support, while also giving them the infrastructure and support they need, plus the rising seniors will need to stay committed to our town. And let's do what we did with our schools. We are recognized as being leaders in our school system. The challenge when we met Caitlin, when we met the AAR people, was we didn't want to just do what everybody else had done. We want to be really top of the line because we really feel like we should do that, and there's enough experience out there now to take that on. So I just threw this in. Joyce thought it was funny. We already lost Tom Brady. Will we lose you too? And you can think about that. There's a lot in that it fits in line with this situation. All right, got to watch my time. Yeah, UMass Gerontology Institute. We're getting into the survey now. It's the second oldest academic program in the United States. Currently 1 out of 4 PhDs, graduate from UMass Boston. And they were at 50 cities when we wrote this. They're probably already 60 cities out of the 300 in Massachusetts that they're working with. So we're not like the first down the pike. They also have a lot of best practices going on in this thing. And in our progress, to be part of this AARP designation, which is one part of our objective, is you've got to go through certain steps. So this slide is about, in 2019, we applied for this. We got recognized, not even close to doing what we need to do, but all we did was say, we're raising our hand, we want to get involved, how do we do this? And then what happened was we got a grant through Michael and Danielle McKnight, and we got $35,000. We hired the UMass team to conduct a comprehensive study. And now we're at the point of, the test results have been submitted. As of July 2021, it goes to the AARP committee or whatever that is. And then we need to create an action plan, and we need to do that in a year, or you're bounced out. And then if you get through that 1-year hurdle, and it can be ambitious or not ambitious, but after you get to that 1-year hurdle, you technically have about 3 years to implement those things, or you're out. So, I'm thinking it's going to be a 5-year plan, but really this is just a guideline for us to move forward. It's logical, it makes sense, but we also have other big things to do. So you can see where we are right now. I'm not going to spend time on this slide. The purpose of I think the purpose is pretty clear. We're trying to plan for services, supports, and programs, and we're trying to develop and execute North Reading's Age-Friendly initiative. Again, this is UMass Boston talking. So this is based, the AARP is based on the WHO, World Health Organization's framework for the 8 domains of an age-friendly community. We're going to go through each one of those. Obviously, the goal is to have people participate in their community, see that word, have them stay connected to the people who are most connected, again, social community, and have them stay healthy and give to support to those who no longer can live independently. And there's your purpose in life, because we should be helping each other. The way we did this, and I invited a lot of you who did the survey are in this room, not the 1,400 residents, but a lot of the stakeholders and everything. We really did a big study. We did focus groups of 32 residents, and we identified them as current seniors, rising seniors, stakeholders, and a mixed group of people we just knew in town. And then we also did key informant interviews with, Michael, Steve O'Leary was our guy, Jen was, school committee was Scott Buckley, Daniel McKnight did it, the 2 chiefs here did it, and Council of Aging did it as well. And these were all done independently so that they didn't know what the data was going forward. And what we got from the town was for the 5,000 households that we hit, basically, we had basically a 1,400 response rate, which was, again, next to one other town, it was the highest rate anybody's ever seen for response, which to me, again, indicated we have a lot of interest in this topic. Like, people to participate in this survey, they took time out of their day to go and do this. And it wasn't limited, if you look on the right, the response rate, it wasn't like, well, the 55 or 59-year-olds didn't participate. They were almost the same as everybody else. Of course, you'd get more in the 70 to 79, but they're really close together. And again, that was a wake-up call for me and for the UMass team to say, wow, there's really something going on here that's happening. Caitlin will say, I'm going to call her Caitlin, that the overriding theme that we have to be aware of is that, the cost of living for the people who are in this senior demographic is really they're challenged. It's really more than half of the people were finding that living here is really very difficult. And some were in the category of economic insecurity, meaning 25,000 or less coming in their households. When you think of the average property tax being 9,000, doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for them to maneuver, right? And they clearly said there's no place to live in the town after I get rid of my house. I have to go move. And I don't know how many people have been in our group over the 10 years where we'd lose them and they'd be like, I'm leaving because I can't stay here anymore. There's just no place for me, and I'm leaving my community of 40 years, right? So ideas for action. Again, I'm going to kind of go over these quickly because I don't want to get too lost in the words, but, property taxes is obvious, and they want to get more access to existing property tax relief programs. I'll talk about that later. And they want to help people to know how to apply. Again, I'm going to go through these very quickly. So respect and social inclusion. This kind of this is a lead on from our senior summit that we did at the Council of Aging. And basically, results. Results, I asked Caitlin, is there a difference between the stakeholders versus the forums versus the residents? And she said no. Everybody gave the same data going in, and everybody gave the same data going out. So what you're seeing is a consensus of all these entities. There's no new ideas or different ideas that different groups had. Otherwise, I'd break them out. They're all the same. So what we heard was, older adults are not viewed as a priority in North Reading. Falls in line with, we're not a friendly town. 30% of residents are only slightly or not at all satisfied with the extent of local policymakers taking into account the interests of the older residents. And only 11% respondents felt they have felt excluded in North Reading, but the most common reason was because of their age. This is coming from UMass, and this is the ideas for action. What this is, she's saying based on her view of the 50 communities in town based on best practice she's learned. She's coming back with some of the ideas that she thinks we may want to consider. I'm going to come back with the next slide to show how we can combine the two, because we're in North Reading. We're not in all of Massachusetts. So she's suggesting, make town boards and committees more demographically diverse. Right now, we're just happy to have people come out for committees. So, that's it's optimistic, but we'll see what happens. Organize an international day of service to take a community issue together, to get people to come together on a day of service. And then started getting to dementia and purple table. That's a whole nother issue I'm not even going to get into. What I will say is I'm going to interpret that now is to how we can look at it in our way and come up with answers, or what I think are answers, is let's create a new age-friendly task force. And partial responsibilities would be to try to get younger and older residents to become involved. Help drive the age-friendly initiative we're talking about. With some group leading the way, it's not going to happen. We have our Waste and Sewer Committee, and there's a group of people who are on a task force that are doing just that work. If that group didn't exist, we wouldn't be able to get that work done. We need that for the age-friendly task force. By the way, I went to the select board before I was on the select board 5-6 years ago saying we need a task force, and I got kind of thrown out because it wasn't, the ideas hadn't been matured. I'm bringing it up again 6 years later. To connect seniors, to get them involved, we need a new adult learning committee. We need to get the schools committed, the schools and the seniors and the library all connected into one, and vice versa. And it's a two-way street. And so if you picked up anything over here, one of the articles, and you can pick it up later if you didn't, is about the treehouse community out in Western Mass. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but it has national recognition. And basically what they did was, this is many years ago, 10, 12 years ago, they set up a space where the seniors were waiting for the kids to come out of school, and the kids that were largely foster kids came out of school and went and met with them, very much like a Boys and Girls Club model, where they come together after school and there's someone there waiting to help them out. And what they found is that by doing this arrangement, the seniors felt great because they had purpose, they were delivering value to these young kids, and the foster kids exceeded all expected benchmarks. It was a fantastic thing. Now, I know we don't have hardly any foster kids in our town, but I know we have a lot of kids in our town who don't do sports. Jen can tell me that. There's a lot of kids who don't do sports who are looking for a place to be and looking for a place to connect. This wouldn't be a bad thing for us to consider as we start to go forward. And then a volunteer committee. We have volunteers in town who work behind closed doors. We don't recognize them, we don't see them, we don't know what they're working on. I see them because I'm on the, I'm liaison to a lot of them. They're very dedicated, but we never celebrate them. So I'm proposing to you that we actually create a volunteer committee that its purpose is to find volunteers. And let's amp it up a little bit. Let's have them do a recruiting once a year where we bring in, we make it open to the town. We have these various committees have a table, and then people get to walk around and learn what's going on, because many people feel just intimidated to just learn what your committee's doing. It's often behind closed doors, or if you're not in the loop, you don't know what's going on. So we should do that. And the other thing we should do, which the Chamber of Commerce used to do, was they used to recognize people for doing good work. Now, I know we still have the Good Neighbor program, but we should do it on a bigger basis where we have maybe a gala where we celebrate the volunteers, because there's a significant amount of money we're not spending because volunteers do a lot of the work. And I'm always impressed at how much volunteers do, especially the people in this room. Let's go on to communication and information. This is where people are getting their information from. The transcript, thank you, Maureen, is a highly viable way to communicate in our town. I'm always delighted we have that, and whenever we can, we encourage our neighbors to get it because they need to know that. Word of mouth is an issue. I'm always amazed at how many people I see at the Heavenly Donuts, which is a comfortable space. I see them at McDonald's, not as comfortable. I see them at 7-Eleven in the corner. People are looking for a place to congregate. They're looking to get together, and obviously the pandemic has put a big lid on that. But I used to see that all the time, thinking 7-Eleven, they're sitting on stools. This can't be comfortable. But to be socializing, they would do it, and they would go out there, would do it, and they were having a good time. Email notifications from the town, obviously, Michael, that always helps. Social media, people are becoming more and more, don't think the seniors aren't touching their computers. They are. They're becoming much more savvy, and the town website has a role as well. So again, this is UMass Boston's suggestion is that we, and I don't disagree with these suggestions, that we get health and human service stakeholders together for biannually or quarterly exchange of perspectives and approaches to outreach, build a campaign to build visibility for the CIT resource document, which is over there if you want to see that. It's one of the first things we ever did. The resource guide, expand our learning opportunities, and now you're starting to see, again, I'm starting to put down the same committee you saw. These are things they can get involved with to solve. Publish information, in newsletters. We should have a regular face for this community, and then put them in local newspapers. And again, you can't see the bottom, but this is a combined responsibility of the COA, who does the newsletters. I'm suggesting a new age-friendly director, because I think we need someone to drive this forward. We have Jen Ford, who is our youth services director. We've already seen the value of that. I don't know why we wouldn't want to have an age services director. And the new age-friendly task force, because again, their job is to advance this program, to bring forward the AARP thing, and to embrace the seniors that we have going forward. Civic engagement and employment. Probably the most important thing here is that 65% agree that there are ample opportunities to participate in local government, and 52% believe there are opportunities to volunteer. That sounds like a group of people. If we start thinking about it, that's that 6,000 people we talked about that want to contribute to your town. They want to give to you, but we have to help them get there. We have to give them a pathway to bridge that gap. And I like, these are from all the comments we got, Caitlin put up the ones that are the most common for our town that she heard that were repeated a number of times. So these aren't just one-offs. These are like, a lot of people said the same thing. And so you get an idea of where people are coming from. They want to contribute. They want to lead a life of purpose. So again, this is their recommendations, but I don't disagree. I'm just telling you what I think we need to create to meet those goals. So raise awareness of senior issues, get them, the people, especially as they're beginning of retirement, get to the retirement fair, get them connected, part-time employment or volunteers, expand programming around retirement planning or finding a post-retirement job. That's an adult education thing. And develop a Citizens Leadership Academy to educate residents of all ages about municipal processes and encourage their involvement. This is how we build our community. This is how we keep people connected. By the way, when I look around my room right now, if I didn't get involved 10 years ago, I don't know who I would know here. I would know you. And I would know you in reading, and I probably would know Phil because we connected on the bikes. But I really wouldn't know you. And I know John because we're friends in the neighborhood, right? But that's it. And there's for the people who aren't here, there's 30 people in the room. Getting involved, you get to know people. This is really important to what we need to be thinking about. Community support and health services. So now we're seeing something very interesting, rising seniors. Remember I said about the sandwich generation. I put that down there in the honeymoon period, but the sandwich generation going on. Take a look at these numbers. Most residents are caregivers under the age of 60. Caregivers. That means they're not just taking care of their kids, they're taking care of their parents. And 60 to 69, 50%. The highest peak are in those ages. And then it quickly diminishes, falls off. And then how do they feel about that? Under the age of 60, 80% of the people, basically 80% of the people said it's extremely challenging to have my kids in school at the same time I'm taking care of my parents. And 60 to 69, not far off from that number as well, right? We can assume that, the 68%, 70 to 79, 80 to 80, they're not trying to take care of their kids at that point, although some of us are still taking care of our kids at, an older age. But, the point is that what we don't think about is the rising seniors are under stress, and we don't even see it because we haven't thought about it. And this study brings that out. I can't explain this slide. I always needed Caitlin to do one, but what I can tell you, what I take away from it is basically the group that is under stress, that younger group that is trying to take care of their parents, they don't know where to find help, and they just don't know how to get anything done. They're really at a loss to get things done, and we haven't educated them about how to solve these problems and take the stress off their back. Caitlin, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I know you're listening in, but I'm doing the best I can. So what do we need to do? Again, action items. We need to improve our knowledge about available services. And so I would put that as the Project 500 team. The Project 500 team that is reaching out to those households that are solo wagers. And by the way, what they're doing for the solo wagers, everybody needs to know. So it's a dual assignment, because eventually, if you're not a solo wager, you probably will be. And so the Project 500 is very important because they can have community outreach. They can call these people. They can set up hotlines. They can set up these type of things that when we have a pandemic, we have a way of reaching out to these people. We know who they are, and we can keep them in the loop and not let them just fall off. Because remember, they're isolated as well. They're not as connected to the community. We can start doing crash courses in caregiving. Again, the Project 500. Council of Aging has a role here, in adult education. I'm starting to repeat myself, but you get the idea. A lot of these things we can solve with a few committees. And I don't need to dwell on this too much. Outdoor spaces and buildings. In general, this is more of a, Jen always has something to say about this slide. Why don't you, if you can you talk about this slide for a second?
Sure. I mean, I think that
I got to put the microphone here.
one of the key things is depending on, when you're talking about accessibility, depending on who's speaking, the reality is what we don't know, what we don't need, we sometimes don't know. So I know I expressed concerns at the time that these figures or these stats could be skewed depending on who was answering them. Because needless to say, if you don't have accessibility issues, you're not prone to notice lack of accessibility. So that was, and they did identify that a lot of the respondents did not identify with mobility issues. So we agreed that this information could be slightly skewed.
That's right. So, the recommendation, thank you, Jen. The recommendation is that, we do walk audits. And we have a committee already, the Commission on Disabilities. I don't know if they thought about doing this before, or it has even been suggested, but this would be a good thing for them to take on, because we have that group already in existence. Do more outdoor programming. We've already talked about, I say we've already talked about, Mary and I have already talked about with Lynn about doing more programming between the Parks and Rec and COA. And as you start to look at that flyer that they send out quarterly, you're starting to see more and more adult-type programming and not just for kids. And that's where Parks and Rec started from, right? I'm sitting on the liaison for the Forest Committee. We're going to work on signage, and we're going to try to make Swan Pond be accessible for the town. That's never been accessible before. So we're really working on that right now. And so you start to get an idea of where, again, how we can start to, with our existing groups, if they understand what we're looking for, they can start to add it on to their objectives. But without us getting the word out, they're never going to know. Transportation, the big one. Remember, this was from way back. This is one of the biggest limitations they had. Let's just look on the pie chart on the right. Not at all or slightly satisfied with 62%. Basically, the way we solve this problem is have autonomous cars. But if we don't have autonomous cars, which we don't, we have to live within the restrictions we have. We don't have public transportation. I think Uber around here is maybe a little bit difficult. Lyfts around here is a little difficult, especially recently. And so for many people, they have decided to leave our town because if you can't get around, how are you going to get to the store, right? Again, if you're in a household of 1 and 1 equals 1, if one of you can drive, the other one doesn't have to. But if you don't have that, if you're that one person and no longer can drive, you're really in a bad situation. So how can we solve that problem? I am the sole representative for the MVRTA. I'm the sole representative to the MBTA. And then Mary does a lot in her group, the COA, to do transportation. Again, you can't see at the bottom, I'm sorry. What I'm proposing is that we combine those all into one transportation committee. Let's get some synergy going. Let's have them start to really knock on the doors of these two regional transportation things, and let's really get the word out, because Mary's group has a lot on their plate just to take care of. Let's find ways we can get the word out so that people can we can start to really go after the transportation issue, at least until we get someone to create a car that can drive itself. By the way, the rideshare option I put up here on that tan table that she really wanted me to point out, Caitlin wanted me to point out the Newton's Numo active share, and apparently it's very successful, and it'd be a good starting point for people to learn about. Social participation. All right, I'm going to start getting into really the big stuff. I know I've been saying a lot of big stuff, but this is big stuff. And I'm saying part one because this is how do people feel about connection to their community? And the simple question was, if you had to ask your neighbor for some assistance, can you ask somebody within 30 minutes to help you out? And 10% did not know anybody they could ask. I'm sorry, 39% did not know anybody they could ask. That's actually, you know, we live in a neighborhood where we know a lot of people in our neighborhood. I think Martin's Pond neighborhood is pretty blessed because we're kind of close together. You know, we have a pond in the middle of us. We share a lot of space. We share the park. So we have a very tight community, but I think in other parts of town that doesn't happen. I think you're a little bit more spread out, and that doesn't happen. So that's kind of concerning that you don't know who to call. The answer to that is, again, more remote learning options, partner with the high school to get more engagement, and starting to reach out to the isolated and at-risk older adults. Again, the themes are all the same. Again, Project 500 would have a role here. And identify neighborhood-based programs to strengthen informal networks in neighborhoods. That can be, like, I know for our neighborhood, developing the park, the Martins Pond Park, was a big deal for us. That really brought us close together. Doing the haunted house up until the last few years was a 20-year adventure in getting to know your neighbors and getting to know the kids of your neighbors, right? So it was a real good community thing to have happen. You get the idea. Housing. So to summarize this slide, basically, it's what we've already said is that there is no real place for people to go in our town when they're out of their big single-family home. We don't have assisted living. We have some condos that are developing. We're starting to work on the Wheeler property is coming through. You know, we have the Pulte property, which is on the outside of town, which didn't get a lot of attention, interestingly, from our town. We're working on the Carpenter property, which is a bigger development that is appropriately hitting some neighborhood resistance, but still it's something that's going on. But we haven't really taken on this issue at the degree we need to. And it'll become, I'm going to skip this right here. I'm going to skip this. I'm going to go right to this. One of the things we could do to keep people in their homes and not move out is to pursue accessory dwelling units. This is not a new idea. This came up in the housing production plan, and I'm pleased to announce that the majority of our town supports it. 60%, actually even more than that, 80% do not resist it. And I'm really happy to know that the CPC is working on that policy right now. And they're looking to come back to the town in 6 months to come up with a formal policy so that if you build an in-law, if you build an accessory unit, that fire knows about it, that the town knows about it, that we can do it safely, and that we can do it, and people can continue to live in their homes as long as they can. That, to me, is one of the biggest, most practical answers we could have right now, and fortunately, CPC is doing that, and they're pursuing that, and they'll come to the town, hopefully in the next town meeting, to propose how that will work. What Danielle had brought in is also what we're seeing is types of housing. And so she's coming in saying, you know, housing alternatives to accommodate the increasing population of seniors and lifestyle, and more affordable starting housing opportunities to attract young adults, because our young adults can't move back into our town because they can't afford to move back into our town, which to me is also a heartbreaker. I'd love to have my son move back into my town. I don't know if he'll ever be able to do that, the way things are. So if we gave them starter homes, purpose starter homes, we'd start to be able to do that, because these are the people that add vitality to our community, including the seniors, right? So it's on both ends of the spectrum. We need people on the upper end, and we need people to come into our town who used to live here and are part of our community to be able to have a place where they can land. So from that housing plan, the goal was officially, that was presented in this room, that we need 152 affordable housing units. That way we're safe with all the things, and it would also meet the needs of seniors and everything else like that. And that breakdown that they suggested would be 80% rentals, 20% ownership. And it can go to the younger singles, couples, empty nesters, and seniors who are part of our community or to return or remain within our community. But I got to give you a wake-up call, okay? There are the Edgewood, which is currently on that's subsidized housing inventory. Of the 500-something units that make up our subsidized housing inventory, 406 are going to fall off in 2038. I know that sounds like it's a really long ways away. It's not that far away, especially when you're talking housing and when you're talking about limited space where we can build the housing. So while our inventory is very close to 10%, and we know we got caught because, the 40B issue on Elm Street came up, and 540 is just about 10%, we need to not only hit the 152 to handle the growth, but we also have to consider that we have a bunch of units that are going to fall off, and that we have to think about that going ahead. So that's an important issue that I think Steve and I know that not many people know. And so some of the big takeaways you can see from, again, this is from the master plan now, is that, the goal, the master plan is a summation of all this information, right? Provide affordable and appropriate housing for seniors that allows them to remain in North Reading, affordable housing for young families, meets the needs of the cost-burdened households, provide a variety of housing options, and use housing to support economic development, transportation, environmental, and other planning goals. And then the forums that they did, again, this is from the MAPC Housing Production Plan. We did forums of 50 people, and we did a survey. You can see that we invited 5,400. We got 806 to respond. And the top 3 votes was promote mixed-use development and a new downtown. We haven't talked about that yet. Allocate a percentage of the Berry property proceeds for affordable housing. Where did that come from? I'll explain that in a second. And then on the survey, they expressed significant concern regarding housing affordability, strong interest in developing a vibrant mixed-use town center, and the #1 location for mixed-use development was Main Street and 62. And the high-frequency representative comments was a vital downtown or town center with more density, retail options, and other amenities that were within walking distance to new housing. You can start to see where this is going. We're starting to, find mixed-use development, which is not uncommon in other towns. We just never really did it in our own town. Where's that $7.8 million come from? When I was on the EDC, I was the first chair for the EDC when we relaunched. And what was my objective? My first objective was let's get Pulte properties out of state hands and let's get into our hands so we can reap the benefits of it. It wasn't my idea, but it was obvious that was the first thing we should worked on. And so we pursued that. And when we got our proposals back, the commercial proposal was $2.5 million for a soccer field thing. But we got 2 proposals from Pulte Properties. We got an $18 million proposal and we got a $30 million proposal. The $18 million proposal was we would bring in affordable housing. The $30 million proposal was no affordable housing, but we're going to give you $30 million. Of that $30 million, we'd get to keep approximately $20 million of it, right? So when we were, as the EDC was recommending, we didn't realize that we were so close on the 40B. What we were thinking about was this development's going to be on the outside of town. We know we need to bring in affordable housing into our community. Let's take the $30 million, let's take the money and run, and let's earmark some of that money, the differential between the $30 million and the $18 million, let's earmark that for affordable housing. If you take out the percentages, because we never got the full amount of money, that equals $7.8 million. Never in writing. It was never promised. It was never brought forward, but it was definitely discussed. And it kind of makes sense when you realize the history of it, why that came up and where that number came from. So I've been very possessive of the $20 million, and I've been really careful to only recommend things that I think we should spend it on. The study for the sewage is a good use of that $3 million. But let's not forget where some of it came from. Social participation, part 2. Again, this is a big one. The most commonly cited preference was for a physical space to gather as a community. 29% of the respondents mentioned a desire for physical space to gather socially and otherwise. And who was looking for it? Under age 60, 42%. Age 60 to 69, 35%. Age 70 to 79, 39%. And 36%, 86 plus. Again, if you look at other communities who have been asked this question, we were extremely high on the chart. We're one of the highest communities. I think we're the second highest in Massachusetts as far as who was looking for this type of thing. Anybody want to guess why we may be one of the highest? We don't have a downtown. That is the answer to the question. That is absolutely correct. So, you know, I mean, you look at Stoneham, you look at Reading, you look at Andover, they have downtowns. We have, as we like to say, we have Route 1 highway going through our town with no downtown. So it makes sense that this would be a need for our town. And what are some of the things people mention? Again, age-active people, exercise classes, walking trails, bike trails. Phil Hertz, who is leading that in a stellar way, is working on connecting Ipswich River Park with the bike trails that go all the way up north, and we've been having, it's been a great effort, and it's looking better than ever. Now that Linfield wants to join with us, who was the biggest roadblock, it looks like this is really going to happen, and it's been something that's been on the goals for many, many years, and now it's going to happen, so thanks to Phil Hertz for doing that, who actually, by the way, started with our age-friendly group and then branched off once we figured it out. And then college classes for seniors and cultural programs. They want to, they want to learn and be involved. So now let's go to the senior center that we have. What is the participation level? Well, under 60, none, basically. Age 60 to 69, 8%. Age 70 to 79, 14%. And then, age 80, at least people have been inside there and seen what's going on. What do we commonly hear? Well, that's for old people. We always hear that. Why don't you go to the senior center? It's for old people. Don't want to be doing that. And these are some of the comments we got, that the senior center is small, classes can be tight. I've been in there where you're doing the exercise programs. It's it's arm to arm, and our programs are not we're just not uncomparable to other towns because we just haven't put that kind of investment in. So what does the I'm losing my acronyms. Age-friendly team say, the ad hoc age-friendly team say, is we need to create an intergenerational community center. This has been going on for 8 years. I think everybody's kind of on board with it. It combines the senior center, youth services, parks and rec, and vet services all into one facility. This is not innovative or new. This is being done in other towns with great success. Cost is unknown, but I'm estimating around $5 billion. Maybe it's more. Maybe Rita can say higher. You want us to give a number?
It was $9 million plus 7 years ago.
It was 9. Okay, so Rita Mullen is saying, who's on that LUC committee, right? It was $9 million plus 7 years ago.
Yeah, we had an architectural firm come in and look at a particular location we had at IRP, and they came up with that.
Okay. All right. So it's it's not small money. So that resides within the Land Utilization Committee, and it also resides within the Facilities Master Planning Committee, which is looking at all our facilities about what the priority is. One of the highest priorities I think I can safely say is the fire department needs to be, the fire station needs to be rehabbed. I think is probably a fair thing to say. Nothing's been decided, but I think that's pretty clear. I've heard about DPW, the garage needs to be looked at next, and then next up, again, informally, what I've heard is that the Intergenerational Community Center would be next up on the docket for taking that on because they consider it pretty important. And does that fall in line with what the town thinks? The MAPC master plan, one of the main goals, again, this is summation of all this information, is to create a intergenerational community center. And they're even bringing in the idea of throwing town offices into the facility as well, so everything could be all in one facility and kind of get, maximum exposure to each other, kind of bring ourselves together more and more. There's even, I won't even necessarily dwell on it right here, but they're even talking about maybe moving it into a Main Street location, but we're going to hear more about that later. So if we think, I started saying, what are other cities who have done this? Intergenerational program can be challenging to do that if you haven't changed the conversation. If you haven't embraced what the seniors have to offer your town, someone like Salem, they're only getting 60 plus, but they're not getting the youth they expected because they didn't change the conversation. They didn't present it right. Swampscott's plan was to get the vote to build it in. They attached their intergenerational community center to the schools. Sounds good. It made it more efficient, right? It was a bad idea. There's scheduling problems, there's access problems, there's liabilities problems, and there's become a territorial problem. So to get the vote, they built it, great, but the plan to connect the dots wasn't a good plan. So I'm going to point to Lexington specifically, just to kind of ramp this forward. I don't know if anybody's ever been to the Lexington Intergenerational Community Center, but they have Parks and Rec, they have vet services, they have youth services, and they have the senior center there. I've given seminars there, and I can tell you from 9 to 2, 9 to 3 in the day, every day, Monday through Friday, that place is filled with seniors. They're doing exercise classes, they're having lunch, they're enjoying themselves. It's a very professional place. They're actively engaged. And magically, at around 3 o'clock, a lot of them disappear, and all of a sudden the kids come in. And from 3 to 9, that place is cooking. Things are going on. The kids are in there and having a good time. And I've seen this repeatedly, time after time. That's what I can imagine us doing too. If you start thinking of that, you know, if we start offering where the seniors are there waiting for the kids to come, it gives them a good place to land. It'd be a great place to exchange information and going on there. So these are some of the best practices we've learned. I think we can capitalize on this, but I think the Lexington Center is really where we need to be. By the way, when I talked to them, I talked to the age director there, the age coordinator, 20-something-year-old, and she said before they opened this community center, 8% of the people who were seniors had cards. They give out membership cards to the community. After they opened this up, it was like 22% of their community joined on board, and they're actively involved. Like, this just brought them out of the woodwork. And this is a place where they have to drive to get to. They couldn't put it in their downtown because their downtown is already filled up. They don't have any place to put it, so they had to put it outside of their town. And even with that hurdle, they had huge participation. So we're going to go on to infrastructure. We've already answered the question, what does Andover, Reading, and Stoneham have that we don't have? And the two answers are, one is it brings people together. That's a downtown. And what else do we have? It ain't pretty. It's very important, and we need it. Vincenzo, you want to answer that question?
Of what we need?
Yeah.
Or what it looks like?
What you and Steve are working on.
Yeah, sewer.
Sewer, that's it.
It doesn't look like the Linway without the dealerships.
Yeah. So we obviously need sewer, right? And that's very important. That's the elephant in the room. That's always been the elephant in the room. And so the really good news is, I'm going to come back to that in a second because I'm going to throw some numbers at you. But the good news is, as a community, we just decided to explore that fully and to devote $3 million to see if we can get that connected with through right in front of Merrimack College all the way down to connect up that way. And Steve and Vincenzo have had a lot to do to make that happen, along with many other people in town, I have to say. So let's think of the concept of the new downtown village, right? Proposal. Not a big proposal because a lot of people know about it. But this person is saying, I've lived in town for over 40 years. We've never had a downtown like my neighbors. How come, right? And so we need to create, I'm suggesting we need to create a new community center, also known as a downtown village. And I would like to think of it as a place where everybody knows your name. Very similar to the way I know people's names inside here. Let's create a place where people can go and gather and get to know each other on a very social level. And the key elements of making a downtown thrive, to make it thrive, is to have retail follows roof. And what that means is, if you put roofs near a business center, near a development center, you will be able to sustain retail. And retail in our case means boutiques, it means restaurants, it means sports bars, maybe it means an open or a closed marketplace, and it may be personal services such as exercise or things of that nature. That's what, by putting your housing, dense housing, close to your commercial area, you can drive that business and keep it sustained and not have things closed left and right. And then there's the second element is a there's there. Kind of a weird term. What it's saying is that there's you can't just have housing and businesses. You got to have a center. You have to have a civic center. You have to have some sort of place where people gather that isn't just about making money. It's about making people feel good. So think about the Linfield Marketplace, right? In the winter, big billboard, skating. You got skating, and they advertise the skating. Has anybody ever been on the skating pond over there? Not that great, right? It's horrible. It's like too tight, too small. You really can't do anything about it. But what does it do? It creates a place where you can gather. And what do they do during the summer? They have outdoor yoga. They have outdoor fitness. They do things like that. It doesn't take a lot to make a civic center, to make a community gathering spot, but you got to do it, or it won't work. It just won't work. You need to have a there's there. And then traffic calming and walkability. So Michael and I joined Michael Gabberto, our town administrator, and I, in 2015. We met at Heavenly Donuts. We met with the Chamber of Commerce. We met with Daniel McKnight. We met with a few people who are interested in this topic. And I think I had literally just run down the road because I'd run down and got a feeling for what the traffic is about. And the reason why we gathered was to discuss, we don't have a downtown. What can we do to make our community better? What can we do to make this downtown a thriving downtown and not a Route 1 going through it? And so everybody's bouncing ideas. Nothing really sat. And so I finally just said to Michael, Michael, could we potentially change our highway? Can we literally change our highway into something that would be more like a downtown Main Street? And he said, we definitely could. And in my mind, meeting is over. That's where we got to go. And so, interestingly, on my way into Boston that day, Traffic Calming came on NPR. They were talking about communities across the country are slowing down traffic in front of areas where you want people to gather, to have congregate. It's not really rocket science, and traffic calming was a thing. And communities are trying to find it more walkable. You park once, and you go around and you move from there. These are not innovative ideas, but they're critical to having a downtown being successful. So in 2016, again, I sat through this one. I might even be in that picture. I'm not sure. I think I see Rita in that picture. On the right, we gathered a number of times, and we focused on this Main Street area. If you look at the, I don't know how to describe it. You can see 28 is going north to south, up and down. And then 62 Winter Street is that diagonal line that's sailing off to the right of the screen. We studied this and we asked a few questions, and what the consensus was should the town redesign a segment of Route 28 to make it a slower speed walkable Main Street? There was a great consensus. What that means in terms of surveys is it means that many, many people thought that was a really good idea. And again, this is many people who participate in this, so this isn't the voice of one. Of which of the 5 blocks, and I'll go back to this slide, of the 5 blocks that we looked at, which of the 5 blocks would you want to see that development happen sooner? Participants overwhelmingly chose Block 9. That's the existing Stop and Shop area, which is Ocean Lot. So this was written a while ago, right? That's the Ocean Lot area that I think a lot of people know that would be a really nice place to do some sort of development. That was overwhelmingly decided versus any other area. That was the place we should spend our time. Oh, sorry, wrong button. Would you support multifamily residential? This is before we started working on zoning. Again, participants overwhelmingly said yes in favor of amending the zoning. And CPC has already started to do some of that work to start to break down that barrier. Our zoning was saying no houses should be near commercial development. Now we're saying they should be. We should have people living near where they live. Should the town invest in putting a there, creating a public, civic, or indoor, outdoor gathering space around which private development could cluster? Majority voted in support of that idea. And then, of course, was there support for the wastewater treatment? Yes, of course there was. That was another big thing. I'm going to skip this for a second, but I'm just going to cut down to the bottom there. What we also learned is that the retail gap is significant in town. When you think of going out for dinner, not many people think about going out to dinner in our town. They go elsewhere. They go to Burlington, they go to Linfield, they go around town. And that was definitely pronounced back in 2016. And it was measurable. There's actually data to support this. What we figured out was with the amount of money that was leaving our town, we could easily handle 6 restaurants, additional restaurants, plus 10 types of stores or services of things of that nature. Now, I'm going to be honest, in today's environment, I don't think that number holds up, especially the retail stuff. I think we've all seen the squeeze on retails, but I think the restaurants, everybody likes to go out to eat. So I think we have plenty of upside to keep our money in town and not have it leave. And then that was the 2016 perspective. What did the master plan from 2020 say? Again, the overall consensus, and again, this is the big takeaway from the whole plan was, attract private investment and redevelopment, bring in leisure retail and condo apartments, make them viable, creating a shopping district, address housing demand by allowing more options, create attractive roadway and a robust town center, and sewer and zoning. Keeps coming up. And again, this is just another way of looking at it. All the interest was in that area. I don't think I have much to add to this slide. And again, the same type of thing we learned over and over again. So the trend has been there. The trend has been there. It's not a new trend, it's an old trend, and it's one I think some of us recognize. So this was taken from, CPC did they hired a consultant. The abacus came in. The two problems we asked them was, since we didn't have sewer when we did this study, didn't even have the prospect of sewer on the horizon for 10 years, can we put in a package treatment plant here, much like the same way we did at Pulte and at Edgewood? And would it work? That was one question. The second one was, if we were to do something here, what's your concept? What would you imagine us potentially doing? They came back in the first meeting, I think, because I went to the meeting, they pretty much said, you can put in a package treatment plant, no problem. We don't have to drain it out anywhere. You have plenty of capacity here. We can handle stores, we can handle retail, we can handle, a number of units. That's not the issue. And then they went on to draw, and this is only a concept. This is not reality. But if you look at this right now, Main Street is 28 is coming diagonally across the screen, and then Winter Street is going down the bottom of your screen, and that plain block at the bottom is the Kitties. It's just so you know where we're at. And this was one example of how we could potentially bring in all of these elements together with the potential prospect that up in the upper left-hand corner, kind of right down that, if you go to the, I don't know how to describe it, the 8 ball. At the 8 ball of a pool set, you can see that there's an attempt to draw in a civic center, which would be the intergenerational community center and potentially town hall as well. So the concept is, and Steve, you put these words in my mouth, it's a private and public partnership. It would be a combination of us helping to set the table about what we're looking for, how we want to see things proceed, make the permitting easy, and offer sewer one way or another. And then they, a developer would come in and bring forward a community plan that we have a lot to say in it. So it'd be a private and public partnership. What are the economics? So anybody know what the 50K might mean? Just trying to get you to think. How would we pay for this, right? This is the economics. How would it be paid for? There's people on those sites right now. Stop and Shop owns a chunk of it. It's 19 acres. 50K is for every door you build, before you even build it, for every door you get a permit for, a developer can say, I've got the permit for it. I have 100 doors. All right, 50,000 per door. That's what somebody will pay for the ability to be able to create the housing. Forget the housing. One door, just being able to have the permit. They'll pay $50,000 to be able to have the right to be able to build on that property. That's why permitting is very important. If we get people the permitting, they come up with $50,000, you can suddenly see where that money is going to come from if we're going to have to buy out Stop and Shop from their property, right? Because they own it right now. 200K. And I gave you a little hint there, PT. Property tax. The current, in that area right there, we are currently deriving revenue of $200,000 per year. It's a little less than that, actually, but let's just call it $200,000. If we were to develop that in that concept right there, on housing alone, our tax revenue would be $1.6 million. How did I get that? I went to Edgewood and used those numbers. It's a perfect model for what we're doing. That's not including retail. That's not including the restaurants, not including all that. So to me, I look at the differential between the 1.6 and 200,000. That's a lot of new money coming into our town. Now, Pulte property, by the way, is 3.5 million is what that brought in. It's significant amounts of money. So housing brings us in new revenue and would help us to fund what's going on here. Then sewer versus package treatment plant. This is the number I held off from you. So we just voted in October to do the plan. In October of 2022, we expect the committee to come back and say, we have the plan. It's going to be whatever price it is. We don't know what the grants are. It's going to be over 100 million. Don't be scared by that number until we know the grants. It doesn't mean anything. Until we know the return of investment, we don't know anything. But in October 2022, the town could potentially say, no, we're not doing that. We don't want to do that. I hope that's not the answer, but it could happen. That's a big benchmark for us. If it happens that they vote yes, it's pretty solid that by 2026, we will have all of Main Street connected, ready for the first flush, and we'll be ready to connect up the businesses, including this business right here. But if we end up in October 22 being rejected, I'm going to repropose, which I always thought was going to be our plan, was to do the package treatment plant. It would cost us $3 million. Maybe we can get the developers to do it, but if we can't, to me, the $3 million to give them the permitting and to have the sewage problem solved gets made up quickly when you start to look at the increased tax revenue we'd have. It alone, just the tax revenue of $1.4 million a year. It wouldn't take you very long to pay that money back to the town, and you get all the other benefits that we've talked about right along the way for our community. So Joyce and I were down in, can't remember the name of where we, Raleigh, not Raleigh-Durham. It was in North Carolina. South Carolina, that's right. Myrtle Beach. And we were walking around, and this is just some live examples of what we saw of what a community center would look like, right? It gives you an idea of what it is. It's attractive. It's not unattractive. It's a place where people gather. It's not about cars. It's really about people walking around. And I didn't take this picture because I didn't want to burden it too much, but when we were visiting our daughter, we went to one of the squares she thought was a really nice square, and right there at the square is Town Hall, right at the edge of the square, defining, giving it there. This is not radical stuff. This is all being done across the country. So, LUC, and I've heard from a bunch of people, Rich, okay, downtown we get, not sure how we're going to pay for it. That's, the sewage is an issue. I'm seeing that issue being resolved in either 1 year or by 2026. And so we can get started on the downtown. I don't see much hurdles in the middle of that, especially considering the social benefits. But there's been resistance. There's been a lot of talk about how, well, we really don't want the intergenerational community center in downtown. We really want it to be at Ipswich River Park. And the most common reason I've heard is because we already own the land. Kind of makes sense, right? It makes sense. We went on the beach down in South to visit with one of Joyce's friends. Turns out her husband is a town planner for Falmouth. I kind of told him it was interesting we had this conversation. I actually had the plans with me. I was looking at the plans. It was strange, but he knew stuff. And so we started talking about this, and I go, we got this issue of this intergenerational community center, where to put it. And he goes, let me guess. It's because they want it on town land. And I said, that's exactly why they want it. And he goes, well, that's very common. So I'm giving you now why I think, if nothing else, it's an open discussion and not a foregone conclusion. And here's some of my reasons why. If you build it in a downtown village, people are not isolated. They'll be part of that downtown community, and they'll be part of that village scene. If you're in the Ipswich River Park, as long as you go there, you'll be part of that scene, but you're not going to have anything else going on except for that right there. If you put it downtown, why would we build out a kitchen and a cafe with all the expenses and the staffing that's required and the logistics and the space required to do that? If anybody's ever built out a restaurant before, which I have, it's very, very expensive. Why would we do that when we can have our private-public partnership, have the restaurants right in that community take on that job? Let them do that, and let's support their business at the same time. Why would we, why would we want to build out an expensive septic system at Ipswich River Park if we're going to have sewage or a package treatment plant in our downtown area. That seems like, again, another unnecessary expense that we shouldn't have to do. So let's tap into the very resource we're going to offer on Main Street. And then, one of the things Kim Manzelli said to me is, I'd love to bring my kids down for, youth Parks and Rec right at the downtown, because then I can go shopping. Then I can do my fitness class. I can have some coffee. I can visit with friends while they're doing their thing. To me, it makes a lot of sense, okay? And adding town hall to it as well, I think also makes a lot of sense. What it does for us is if we take it out of the area it is right now, which is removed, offers no strategic benefit, no synergy, let's free up those 4 acres. It makes buildable lots of at least $1 million. Let's consolidate all our town functions into one hall where Michael doesn't have to run around all over the place to find people. And it creates a more thriving There's There, because all those employees, all the people that visit day after day will come to the downtown area, and of course they're going to use the services that are available to them. Of course they're going to be walking around and enjoying themselves. Bottom line, in all the MAPC studies that we did, this issue came up over and over again, and I saw a tremendous amount of support for it. But the bottom line for me is that let's not draw a foregone conclusion that it's resolved. Let's have an open debate about that, and let's have a seat at the table, because I'm tired of people coming to me and saying, yeah, we're not doing it that way. Because I think there's many reasons to think about how we should and how it fits in. Because if we don't create this as a There's There, what are we going to put in? A movie house? I don't know what else you put in there to make that happen. Movie houses are not happening these days. Okay, so I'm almost done, I promise. This is from Caitlin's group. Economic security is a big deal, transportation is a big deal, participation is a big deal, and communicating with people is a big deal. And she's pointing out to us that how other communities have done this is to have an anchor organization that takes control of this. There's steering committees is one of the common ways. They have hired people to take this on. They have an age-friendly coordinator in Camp Ann. The COA director at Swampscott took this on as a major job. Actually, the Salem mayor's chief of staff did it. Remember, they didn't have great results. Neither did Swampscott. And then, you cultivate a steering committee that is going to be touching all the stakeholders that are involved in this type of thing. How do I see it? You got to establish leadership for the committee, for the initiative. We need an age-friendly director. I don't see any other way around that. We need to hire one, and we need to create a new age-friendly task force. And they're going to be taking on all the major work for doing this type of thing. I don't need to spend there. Let's go into a little town structure. This is our org chart. Who is going to be touched by this initiative? Well, of course, the voters are always touched by it. They're going to benefit from it as well. I bring in the school committee because the schools, when I brought it to the attention of that one slide about how the funding is going, they were very much like, yeah, wow, we really are behind this. Let's work together because we don't want to see our funding go away by having people go away. Community Planning Commission, I've already talked about, has a huge role in this. The select board, the select board, I don't think has been fully informed. I appreciate my colleagues coming down. I hope there's people who weren't here that are able to hear this. This is being recorded so they can hear it afterwards. But if you don't hear the whole story, you don't understand the importance of it. That's why I'm really glad you're here today to hear it. And then Finance Committee, obviously, I've kind of left them out of the loop, but everything comes down to finance. How are we going to be able to pay for it? I've tried to give you indications of how we can pay for things and why they make sense. So then we have these 4 divisions at the bottom. Let me just cut to that, and I'm going to blow that up. We have a Finance Division, Public Works Division, Public Safety Division, and a Public Service Division. In the Finance Division, we have a director, right? Liz Work is our Director of Finance. We have a Public Works Division. We have Joe Parisi, who's our Director of that. Our Public Safety Division, we have Chief Murphy sitting right in front of me who's doing that. But in our town charter, we have the position for Director of Public Service Division, but we have nobody who's filled that position. I think it's time that we fill that position. And I think it's, in my mind, it's a Social Services Director, which you can see on the right, or almost see, is who we should be thinking about, and I'm proposing that we do. Also, if you look down the list on the social service thing, you're going to see youth services. Now, I mentioned this earlier, youth services, Jen's role has been extremely valuable to our town and the youth that she serves, because not everybody does the after-school things. They need Jen to do what she does. I think we need an age-friendly coordinator, at least for the next 3 to 5 years, to get us through this hurdle, because honestly, I'm running out of breath, and I'm running out of energy, and I think our age-friendly team is running out of energy as well. It's been a long 10 years, but it's time to we either decide to commit to it or we just don't do it. And it's just a good idea that's just going to go away. So, you know, I've already talked about some of these new committees, so I don't have to labor over that. And I think that the age-friendly task force should be, have some credibility to be able to help drive the downtown village, and I'm saying by 2026, help drive that housing plan, keep the pressure on of things we have to be paying attention to, and help drive the AG, the Intergenerational Community Center, along with all the committees that are working on it as well. We should be working as a team and not be working separately. It should be a really open discussion. I think the bottom line is that, you know, we decided we're here for that. I hope you are too. And that, my friends, is the end of it for me. So,